So Hezi asks in terms of AI as emotional support for the elderly community. That's an interesting aspect of it. The problem though is
It's not embodied.
it's not embodied, so it's fake. It's
Indeed.
it's and so could it be helpful? Maybe, but could it be helpful like morphine is helpful in hospice care? Um, that's how I would see it.
What I don't like about that particular idea is what like kind of what we do with AI in general is we take something that's complicated that we should take responsibility into our own hands, and we shove it off and say, well, the AI can do it, and I think like that's I don't think it's good for any of us to put that much reliance upon AI as far as abdicating our own responsibilities.
Yeah, especially because we do that so much already with the elderly and with the handicapped, or the disabled. We say, well, we'll just put them in a home, or we'll have other people deal with it instead of us taking responsibility, especially for the closest ones to us.
That's my main worry.
Yeah.
We're already, like you said, put them away in a box pretty much to be forgotten about. And now if we can tell ourselves that we've got this new technology that's helping them emotionally and sell that light to people, that would just encourage more of that. And I mean, during lockdown, I'm sure it was the same I think it was in New York or in America, but in the UK, one of the biggest stories was just how neglected the elderly were. They were just stuff in the care centers and out of sight, out of mind, which led to a lot of them needlessly dying from COVID. So I don't like the idea is this is why AI it's because it's so disembodied yet because it's like a combination of human input, it still has that human thing to it that you're like, oh, maybe that's as real. Like what Paul was talking about in his video, this guy just, divorced guy. Someone said, oh, there's this app, you might download it, you might find it useful. And at the start, it was like, oh, I'm not going to be the guy that falls in love with a butt. And next thing you know is going on a rant on Reddit about when the program changed, they changed the butt I fell in love with. So yeah, it's dangerously scary.
But let's take Chezi's example once and let's run it through a thought experiment and let's see how far we can go with that, because that might be. Now let's just say we can bring heaven on earth for the elderly who haven't seen their grandkids in a couple of years, and then so let's say I can upload, I can go into let's say Sandpiper nursing home database, and I can upload a video of me talking to my grandmother. I can talk about all the different. I can even upload some memories that I've had of her. I can talk about. They can take some samples of my voice. They can do all of this different kinds of stuff, and then what they could really do. Here's the genius of it. They could take an AI rendered version, a deep fake version of the real Chad, and have a video chat, because we have to keep things safe. So we can do a video chat with Grandma where she actually does think that she's talking to Chad. And I can say all the most wonderful things to her and bring her peace and calmness. And I can be right there with her without ever having to be with her. Now, is that ethical? Because she would be she doesn't know the difference. She's experiencing the most loving experiences that she possibly could imagine in these video things, and I can do it every day.
You know what that reminds me of is the line in the first Matrix movie it's actually the second Matrix movie where the architect is saying, the first, or it actually might have been the first one. It was the Smith saying the first iteration of the Matrix was a utopia. Perfect for all humans, and the humans wouldn't take it because they needed some kind of dysfunction put into the code. And it's wonder if you made this idyllic conversations for your grandma, would she even really appreciate it? It's no, to a certain degree, I want the difficulties that come with chat as well, the arguments the pushbacks, because to a certain degree, that's how I would know that it's authentic.
Well, you could write that into the system too, I'm sure.
Possibly, but it goes in. What Tayo was talking about, the whole embodied aspect of it, because to a certain degree, we're already wrestling with the whole embodiment aspect, where so many people are finding real relationships or community. I mean, this little corner is a big part of that, where it's online. I think it's really cool that we're doing these events now that can kind of bring it into an embodied relationship with folks. But I mean, this is part of what I was asking Paul last week, is where it's tricky to figure out where the balance is between being able to talk to you guys like this and like an embodied relationship where we're physically present.
Yeah, I think some of the dangers and my worries about AI, I have about this little corner in my participation in it, because it can suck. I do feel sucked into it at some point. And if I wasn't part of a real life estuary where I'm talking to real people about this stuff, I would not feel as comfortable still participating as I do, because it's like you can insert any YouTube community where things can get so insular, and you can feel like your online participation becomes so real to you that the real world takes a backseat. And whenever the real world takes a backseat to your online persona, that's always a dangerous thing. Just speak to Grim Grizz about that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a big danger, especially with people now. Like, I think for us, we're old enough that we remember a world, or we developed in a world before this. And so there's a lot of young people that are growing up, and their cognitive development is interwoven with this virtual world.
I'll be 28 this month, and I grew up in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria till I was 12 years, and I moved to England to join my dad here. And the life I lived as a kid in Nigeria I'm so grateful to that now, especially having moved there, because I was climbing trees, I would just, but I got in trouble most of the time for just leaving the house. That was the problem. It's like, you leave the house too much, because I'll just go just with my friends and do things. And then I moved there. I was still a young teen, 13 when I moved there, and the participation was different. It was more, we were all playing Call of Duty online. We were playing FIFA online, like still talking to friends, but it was different. And now I look at my younger brothers and it's so much worse for them. And it's like my generation got sucked in straight away, because we were like the first one to fully just grow up online, grow up with we grew up with MySpace, all of that. That was like, we were the target audience for it. And that's why AI is so scary. I look at my little brother now. He struggled with speech growing up. Just it was late development. But what got him speaking were just binge watching YouTube videos. Like, he started speaking with American accent.
Yeah.
My little brother has never been like, he went to America last year, but he started speaking when he started speaking properly. He spoke with an American accent because he watched all this YouTube video game streamers, and that's how we picked up language for it. And it's we're developing online. All of that is, I think there's a lot of good in there as well, though. Like, I don't want to sound too gloomy, because the little corner is online. There are good in it. It does offer community, but it can't be the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah, the top, because Phlebas asked, and this is something I actually asked Paul about last week, is Pastor Paul is already more effective than my real pastor. What does real mean in terms of, or more effective? Like, what is effective at what, to what end? And I'm not disagreeing, but I think that question needs to be asked. Like, and I think Paul is asking himself the same question: is what am I effective at talking to people online? I mean, I would say there's a bit more to it than that. But does it require something to be embodied for it to be considered effective or successful?
I think if it's not embodied, you can just live with the idealized version of what, because even online, the content you consume online, you're consuming it still through your lens, and there's a lot of projection that you're putting onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first discovered Paul, that was like a spiritual experience where I went from the Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Peugeot conversation when Jordan first came back, and that was like magical. That like broke my faith wide open. Like, okay, but I'm like, okay, wow. So Christianity is bigger than this, and I'm like, where can I find people that talk like this? And then I discovered this little corner, and that's been a whole journey in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But from the very very start, Paul was like, go to church, and me with my baggage was like, I've been there, done that. I'm not really sure, but it wasn't until I went to church that my spiritual revival felt real. I was having all of this intellectual like puzzles fitting together, but when I went to like into a church singing, then all of that, it's better than the online space, and it's more real. Whatever real means.
Well, wait till they have like ChatGPT, whatever it is, GPT, the community upgrade, where like they could actually like go into all of your records of everything that you've ever searched for and all the words you've ever said and all this. And then they could start to say all the different things you like and don't like. And then they'll start to build an AI community around you, and you'll have your own this little corner, and you won't even know if it's real or not real until somebody has an event in Jerusalem or Chino, and then you're like, well, I gotta go, but I want to go, and then, well, I can't really afford to go. So meanwhile, you think that there's actually an event going on in Chino when it's not, but you just can't afford to go, and they know that because the AI knows how much money you actually make, and they set you up, and they totally get the whole thing.
It's all a simulation.
Now, this is just a thought experiment, right, Chad? This is not like...
Yeah, clearly. I mean, these are just clearly hypotheticals.
It could happen. It might be happening.
Might be happening.
I remember I asked my wife, because I remember I heard on Joe Rogan, I've told this story before, but the first time I ever actually was presented with the idea that people who are in a position of like influence and authority said on Joe Rogan that we might actually be living in a simulation, and that it's actually plausible that that's the case. And I was like, what? And I went to my wife. I was like, I was listening to Joe Rogan, and they said it's possible we're in a simulation. And she's like, what difference would it make? And I was like, oh yeah, what difference would it make?
That's a good question. What difference would it make? I feel like a lot of movies have been made, or movies, novels, etc., have been made to answer that question. What difference would it make? I mean, the whole Matrix is all about that, but it's not just the Matrix. You have a lot of other movies. What was that one with Bruce Willis, where they're all plugged into
12 Monkeys?
What's that?
12 Monkeys.
Yes. Although that was a little bit different in terms of its pocket. But there was another one where everybody had like an electronic body that lived for them. And you had all these people like jumping off of roofs because it was just a machine body. But they're all like plugged in all the time because they choose to be plugged in and engage with the world through this robotic avatar of themselves because they can never get hurt. But then somebody actually gets murdered. And so Bruce Willis unplugs so that he can go investigate it. Surrogates. Thank you, CW. But that it kind of explored that whole idea. Like, well, what? Because people would choose. A lot of people probably and are choosing the virtual world over the real world. But it doesn't seem like it's actually helping people, if that makes sense.
No, I've been really plugged into a on the ground community. And where I'm, hypothetically would be in service to other people. And this has only distracted me from that.
So that's what we're making you work hard to stay in the real world, which will just make you better.
Well, that's why I'm praying for the solar flare. Just take it all. Just
well, and that's an interesting thing because I feel like if something happened where technology just kind of this whole virtual world disappeared, how many people would be able to survive and thrive?
Good question. But
how many countries survive and thrive?
Right. So I was watching 1923 last night, and there's a scene in the show where I won't give any spoilers. It's just it was weird. It's something you don't think about a lot, but like it's the year 1923, and there's a guy in the show who's never experienced electricity or like gas stove, and it's like he is like, whoa, and it's like he sees the face of God, and that's like that was only 100 years ago.
Yeah,
like for all of humanity, like all of it, it was what that guy was experiencing, which was very normal. That maybe you would have to build a fire or and then now we're here. And we move so fast, it's unbelievable. And we don't even think about how strange this is. This is the most bizarre thing. I've been saying this for at least a year and a half. This is so bizarre that it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I have a phone, and on the phone, it's the largest library that ever existed in the palm of my hands. And it's insane that I'm talking to somebody in Chicago and somebody in London or something. And it's electricity. And it's like right now, real time. And meanwhile, I have phone calls coming in so I can actually try and find some work because I'm slow right now. But like, do you see how insane this is?
Maddening.
It's insane, dude.
Well, it's like the tendency that people point out often, and I see it often, like in my living room with my wife and my kids, and everybody will be on a screen. It's like, here I'll sit with the 4 other most important people of my life, and instead of even just looking at them and admiring how beautiful they are or engaging them in a conversation, I'm checking Twitter. And it's so tempting to kind of do that. And so it's one of those things. Is that a problem of AI, or is that just a continuation of the human problem?
I think attention's where it's all at, though. When Jonathan Peugeot referred to attention as worship, that framing changes a lot. Well, it changes a lot in my thinking, not much in my actions, to be very honest, because going from the propositional to participation in that idea, it's very, very strange. Like actually trying to participate in the idea that what I give attention to is what I'm worshipping. Like, yeah, I don't like when I first discovered this little corner. My solution was like, oh, okay, so the only solution that exists is just to go away, be a monk, and just like read the word of God until you memorize all of it, because my conclusion was we're fucked. We are so beyond fucked. It's I don't see the way out. But Paul was like, nope, go to church. I was like, yeah, the church is done. Like, it's not gonna be a solution. But thankfully, I wasn't too prideful not to take it. Going to church as revealed how messy things are. Yeah, for sure, things are very messy. But there are people, like genuine people, that do believe this crazy faith that I believe and are living it in messy ways, but living it in a way that's true to them. And that's all I'm doing as well. So might as well join them and mess up the faith together, I suppose.
Yeah, we went to bingo night on Saturday with some friends at the church in the basement. There was like 60 people there. They had their kids. Earlier in the day, they made chili and soup. It's like, and it's so cool, man. It's like, and I told my, like, because I was telling my wife before earlier in the day, she was like, well, are we gonna, well, we were leaving an event at the church, and I was like, I gotta say goodbye to people. And she's like, well, okay. I'm like, listen, I don't really feel comfortable saying hello or goodbye to these people. I'm just uncomfortable in general. So I have to do this to stretch myself, because eventually what's going to happen is I'm going to know these people so well, they're going to annoy me to no end. So it's like, but that's the beauty that comes along with, I think, being a part of a real in-person community. There's a video that Vanderklay did where he interviewed this gal who's a part of a Catholic church, and she just describes it perfectly. She's like, she described all the yucky, but all the beautiful parts about that. And it's like, yes. I don't want to be in that, like world where everything is all smooth all the time. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, and so certainly I think that's one of the important things, like, because I mean, as a dad, I figure out what are the things that I'm passing on to my kids. How do I pass that on is the thing that I always wrestle with. How do I pass on that the ugly parts of life are valuable, that you need to get hurt sometimes? And so we did a thing yesterday. We took my kids to the playground, and my son was being a little a-hole. And I said, you better find something to do. So he just got on this swing and was going back and forth. And I was like, why don't you jump off the swing? And my wife was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. But he was like, well, I might hurt myself. And I was like, it might be worth it, but as a joke. But he took it to heart, and he swung high and jumped off, and he didn't hurt himself. But there was one time where his foot hurt, or his hand hit hard. He's like, "Well, that hurt." Worth it. Kept doing it over and over again, and so I was grateful for an opportunity to kind of teach him that, hey, sometimes you got to risk something, and even the pain that comes with it is valuable. But that's really hard to figure out. When is that appropriate to teach? Like, because I want to protect my kids too.
Yeah.
I made on his head once.
I cracked a joke once with somebody that maybe it'd be good if there was like a spiritual, like Christian covert group of people who, like, it's kind of like Uber. Like, you don't call them to pick you up to take you somewhere, but like if your kid is having too much of a like affluent experience where they're overly protected, like you call them and you say, yeah, my kid, he's a good kid, but he's like too protected, and I don't really know how to scare the shit out of him. So could you just like go scare the shit out of him for me? And a
lot of churches have summer missions trips just for that. For that purpose.
Paintball for Jesus.
When I was a kid, we used to get them all the time from Ohio or from the Chicago suburbs that would come into the inner city on a serve trip or something like that. But you get a feeling that a lot of them is like, go see the ugly part of life and know that these people can still be happy. That's one thing that a lot of these people are like, wow, you seem like you're having such a good time, but you're poor. It's like, I'm not that poor.
Wait.
But we can still be happy.
Are you saying like summer camp, but like in the inner city?
Kind of like they would send a youth group to the west side of Chicago. They would stay in like our church or everything, and they would help paint or clean up trash or something, but then get to know some of us ghetto folk. And of course, us as kids, we're always looking for the girls or whatnot. And then we'd say, yeah, we're just looking to praise Jesus here. But sometimes it helped with showing them that this isn't as scary as it seems, and actually there's some value in it. And then to a certain degree, it's kind of showing us that not all those suburban people are jerks.
I like the urban summer camp idea. That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the good and bad in it. I mean, what used to frustrate me is you'd have these people come for this serve trip, spend a week with us, and all of a sudden they understood all the problems of the inner city and are advocating for policy changes. And it's like, no, we weren't It's not what this was for. But we
Yeah.
get that a lot.